I think I need some help. I now have the forward skin affixed to my wing. Each of the holes have been drilled up to silver cleco size, which is 3/32. On this forward skin, however, I need to be able to dimple it to be able to accommodate flush mount rivets. If you look at this rivet, you'll see that it has a slight bevel and the head itself is flat, which means that I need to dimple the metal before I insert the rivet in order to make it flush mount. Let me show you the concern that I have. My main issue comes from this one line here on the instructions where it tells me to drill my leading edge holes with a number 32 or a number 31 drill, not a 30 before dimpling. Now the reason for that is because as you dimple the metal, that hole will actually grow to a size that might be a little bit too big to accommodate, number one, the copper clecos, and number two, and more importantly, the rivets that go inside of those holes. Sonex sells a tool that's called the Simple Dimple Die. So here's how this dimple die works. The bottom half of the dimple die, which looks like this, it has a concave area, and then there's another part that slides over the top which has a convex area. It has a nail that goes through a hole in the bottom of the dimple die on the bottom. Then you'll put a piece of sheet metal over the top of that that's been drilled out to a certain size according to the instructions, if you read them and believe them, to use a number 31 or a number 32 drill bit. So you'll slide that over the top, and then you take this other part of the dimple die and that slides over the top of both the bottom dimple die and the skin, and then you'll use a handheld rivet gun to squeeze, basically to pull on this nail, which then kind of clamps the piece of metal in between the two and leaves the shape of the dimple die here in between the two. In all of my tests, the issue that I see with this is that when you actually clamp the piece of metal within the dimple die, the hole actually stretches to a slightly larger size, which is why the instructions tell you to use a slightly smaller drill bit than what you would use normally. So instead of using a number 30 drill bit, it tells you to use a number 31 or a number 32, so that when it stretches, it still has more of that metal to hold on to the rivet. In my opinion though, a number 31 or a number 32 is actually a little bit too big of a drill bit for it. So I've gone to Harbor Freight and I've picked up a package of 7/64 inch drill bits. 7/64 is just slightly larger than your typical number 40 drill bit. So to try and demonstrate the way that I think is probably best to do this, I've gone ahead and made up a couple of coupons made out of just some extra aluminum sheet here. The one here I've put a bend in, and that is to mimic the ribs, and then the other one I've left flat to mimic the skin that would be going over the top of those ribs. And then I've drilled each of them up to 3/32 and put a cleco into each one. I'm going to go ahead and drill each of these holes out to 7/64, and then I'm going to dimple each one of those holes for the skin as well as on the rib. And then at that point, the stretched metal, after I've dimpled it, should accommodate the size of an 1/8 inch cleco, which is the copper colored ones here. And then if it fits that, it'll also fit the rivet, which is an 1/8 inch head. What I found is that if I really pull on this hard, the head will actually pull right through the middle of the dimple die. And it also kind of moves around quite a bit, which I'm not really a big fan of. The hole in the dimple die is much larger than the nail is to try and fill it. So in my garage I've found some standard size nails here. It has just a regular head on the back as opposed to a finishing nail. And it has about a 1/10 of an inch head on, or shank on it. That fits much more tightly inside of the dimple die and doesn't pull through because it has that flat head on it. So that's what I'm going to use to actually pull this and use the tool. It moves much less. It still has a little bit of give, but not as much as the finishing nail that came with the tool. Out. You can see the clecos are in place. They're fairly solid in there. I think I'll want to make sure that I drill it very, very straight so that I don't have an oblong hole at all, because I'm not sure how well these clecos will hold in there with a slightly larger hole than they were designed to hold. But as long as I hold it straight, seems like everything lines up, everything holds in place pretty well. Alright, and you may notice here on the bottom die here, I've ground off a bit of a corner here off of it, and the reason for that is so that it can more easily fit up against the bent part here. So I can actually get this centered up underneath here without it being offset like that. So I'm going to go ahead and put the nail into place. Make sure that you put it so that the concave side is facing up. Put the nail through that. That's going to be the bottom inside of your part. Run the nail up through the hole here, and then put the other die on top so that it pushes the hole downwards. The dimple is going to go down, and I'm just going to give it just enough of a tug so that it comes down and just touches, and that's about it. If you go too far, you're going to end up damaging the nail, and it won't last very long. So there's the dimple there. I don't know if you can see that or not. See that it's been dimpled, it stays pretty flush otherwise. Looks pretty good. Tug it down just gently. Alright, that's half the job. I have these 3 holes done. I've got to do the other side. I'll turn this to the side so it's a little easier maybe to see from your angle. Squeeze it down until it just touches. Release it. All the holes line up basically right in the center as they should. And this is the key part here, is that with that particular size drill bit, the 7/64, when you've dimpled it properly, the 1/8" clecos fit directly into there without any issues. So the material actually stretches just the right amount to be able to hold the copper cleco in place. Alright, and then the final step here, I'm going to go ahead and pull one of these rivets here with the flush head. That's what it should look like when you're all done. It is nice and flush here. Let me go ahead and do a couple more of those. I'm not going to actually drill this until I've posted this video online for at least, a couple of days, maybe a week. I'd like to hear what you have to say, if you have any suggestions on a better way to do this, if there is a better way to do this. So at this point I've done several of these. From what I've seen, the best drill bit size that I have is the 7/64. Seems to be kind of a good middle range drill bit to drill. In that I can still use the silver clecos to hold things in place up until the time that I've had the opportunity to dimple die it. Once I've done that, the 1/8" clecos work really well and fit pretty much perfectly in there. And then it also doesn't have a lot of play when I put the rivet into place. So everything seems to fit really well when you use this method, but maybe I'm just not seeing something. I will mention there is one thing that I didn't do on this particular piece, and that is that I did not deburr. That probably would have been a better option to do before I actually pulled the rivets, and I will be doing that obviously on the airplane wing when the time comes, but just for this quick video I just kind of forewent that. Anyway, if you're still here with me, thanks for hanging out to the end, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. We'll see you on the next one.